Good evening. I want to welcome everyone to the November 4th, 2024 Merrimack School District School Board meeting. Will you stand with me as we say the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you. And we would like to introduce our brand new student representative. Do you want to say something, Bill?
Well, Finn, last week, Finn did an excellent job in the cable program, senior, right, at Merrimack High School. Any plans for the future? Any particular college of choice, Finn?
Oh, lots of different plans. Too many to discuss here, so.
And he has one of the greatest radio voices I've ever heard in my life. But I think, Finn is, we had a wonderful conversation. He is going to be destined for great things because he is a leader and a true friend to a lot of students. So very glad to have him join us.
Yes, Finn, we're glad to have you. We look forward to your student updates and getting that connection with the high school.
I appreciate that.
So you're a senior then, right? So we just have the pleasure of you for 1 year.
Yeah, only. Well, I think you're gonna get sick of me after that, so the perfect amount of time.
Welcome aboard.
Well, this is our time of the evening that we have public participation. We invite the public to come and share their thoughts with the school district. You are always welcome. You state your name and address, and if you're a student, you never have to share your address. Seeing no public participation tonight, we will have a second time at the end of the meeting if anyone comes in during our meeting. Otherwise, we'll move on to recognitions.
Well, we have no recognitions tonight, although I have a couple of students who I hope to have at our very next meeting.
All right, superintendent update.
Very brief tonight. First of all, tomorrow being our National Election Day with lots of local contests also. There'll be no school, as you know, because schools are very busy, some of them, with polling. And we wish the candidates, local candidates, well. I also want to mention that we have an email from the high school from Caitlin Moran that two students put together a videography film as part of a statewide competition. And there were 65 teams or individuals who submitted a video presentation. And our students, Trey Nichols and Carter Williams, placed second. They did I don't remember if I forwarded this to you, I think I did, on a Halloween rapper video, which was a video about Halloween etiquette, and it was just absolutely terrific. So hoping to have Trey and Carter at our next meeting for some recognition for them. And I'm going to keep it brief tonight. That is it for tonight.
Comments from the board. I loved the video. I feel like we should put that as a PSA on WMUR and run it all through October to remind children and teens how to behave on Halloween. All right, Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum Update.
Good evening, everyone. I just thought I would take a minute to let you all know about some training that's been happening in the district. On Wednesday, we will have our legal team on site to do a pretty comprehensive 504 training with our school counselors, nurses, special ed teachers, just sometimes those two areas bleed together, and administrators to talk about everything Section 504. We've also continued our relationship with Dr. Khalees Warnham from KW Diversity. During the month of October, she met with the staff from TFS in the middle school, and by the end of the year, she'll meet with all of our staff across the district. She's also doing some work with students. Her and her partner, Jason, have met with students at the high school and are scheduled to meet with students at the middle school before the end of the school year. Our New McKinney-Vento liaison, Jocelyn Pinsino, has been meeting with each school community to provide that required training. And so I just want folks to know that we're really trying to adhere to best practices and make sure that our systems are effectively supporting students and their families. As Bill said, there's no school tomorrow, and I always like to recommend a resource for parents or students if they're interested. And there's one called iCivics. They have a great website where you can track the election as it's coming in. And it's one of those situations where it's similar to watching the news, where you're trying to get to 270 and what happens. And it talks about toss up in elections and how it gets certified and how the Electoral College works. I still really don't know, but it is, it's on there for those of you that want to dig in more. So just excited about, really putting, seeing the election in action and moving forward. So if folks are interested in checking that out. And I know that Matt's going to talk about the budget, and it is budget season. And I just want to say it is hot, right? We are having a lot of meetings. Bill, Matt, and Melissa and I had our listening sessions that all went really, really well. It's always great to be in the classrooms, in the school communities, and hear what their ideas are, what they need right now, and how they envision our district moving forward.
Questions or comments from the board? Thank you, Amy. Assistant Superintendent for Business update.
Yes, Amy is right. This is budget season, the most wonderful time of the year that I've had the pleasure of going through around 24 times in Merrimack, and look forward to at least a couple more as long as you'll have me at this table. It starts off with taking everybody who works for us, all the positions, and stepping them up according to their collective bargaining agreements. I do it once, I do it twice, I put it away, I wipe it out, I go back, I do it again, and I check it like 100 times over, to make sure everything is there and accurate. Then we build the default budget, and part of that we're going to be kind of touching on a little bit later on with an announcement here. But for this year, our goal in what we want to do is get this budget to you right after Thanksgiving, so the first week of December. And Bill will be going over the timeline for you this evening, and hopefully you'll find it an enthralling experience as always. We put a lot of thought and detail into it, and we try and present you the most accurate information, most complete information, and do it in a transparent fashion so everybody kind of understands everything that's going on. So that's about it. Thank you.
Questions or comments? All right. Thank you, Matt. For the school board update tonight, I just want to again invite the public to have your voice heard tomorrow. On Election Day, the voting places are the Upper Elementary, the Merrimack Middle School, and St. John Newman Church. If you are unsure of what your polling place is, I recommend going to the Town of Merrimack's website where you can locate that. And the polls are open from 7 to 7 tomorrow. I did attend the webinar on school boards and school committees, and there were a grand total of 4 of us in that webinar. But it was very interesting. Most of it is information that we know we do. We're up, have our right to know and our sunshine laws all taken care of with our committees. But the question that I did have regarding any committee, even with elected body that represents the district, it is best practice that a board member sits on that as a liaison and has a vote. So they recommended us look back at the charter for planning and building and investigate that, but it is a best practice to have a voting member, especially if you have an even number of people sitting on a committee, for the odd number person to be a school board member. So I did get that question answered. And lastly, just because of just some interesting circumstances, Naomi has asked if I could switch on to the bus stop committee. So I will be serving on the school bus stop committee from here on out. So just wanted to update you with that. Any questions or comments? All right, Finn, your first student representative update.
I know, the first time in a little while. We had a bunch of stuff happen this week, a bunch of exciting stuff. We'll start out on Tuesday. We had the pleasure of having a cultural exchange with students from Gimhae Foreign Language School in South Korea. So they got to come here and give us some presentations on what school life is like over there. And of course, they got a chance to see and experience what school life is like here. Then we had a volleyball team teacher appreciation night. Which was an incredible experience, I think, for everybody to be able to recognize the teachers that make a difference in their lives. Last Friday, we had our boys football team win their game against BG, and they will be advancing to the playoffs. We had a pumpkin and gourd decorating contest for Halloween, which ended up with some really neat pumpkins, lots of Beetlejuice. We had our senior breakfast, which happened on Halloween. It was a chance for seniors to come in with their costumes, and we had probably the highest participation that I've heard from the last couple of years. So that was really awesome to see. The senior class's mattress fundraiser ended, and it looks like they raised just over $14,000, which is an awesome result. And then, of course, like every other week, there are tons of students doing tons of incredible things. So that's just a tiny highlight of what's been happening.
Thank you. Any comments or questions from the board?
May I just add one thing?
Yes.
We had an opportunity to visit the Halloween decorated office over at Merrimack High School, and it was just incredible. I really haven't seen anything like it. They did a fabulous, fabulous job.
All right. So we do not have any old business tonight. There are some future agenda items we have discussed at previous meetings, but we will put those on future agendas. So we will be moving on to new business. We're going to combine the A and C agenda items in the response to MES parent concern and our bullying law discussion. And then after we go through that, we will move on to the budget meeting dates. So I will turn that over to Bill.
All right, thank you. And if Amy has been kind enough to work the laptop, so wasn't sure whether we were going to have parents here or not. I wanted to face the parents. As you know, at the last meeting, we had a concerned parent. This one's going to be the threat assessment, Amy. A concerned parent speak with us. I do want to let you know that Michelle Romaine and I did have a follow-up meeting with the parents. I won't get into the contents of that meeting, but I do want the public and all of you to know the process that we generally proceed with in terms of any type of threat or perceived threat. Because I don't want parents to think we take statements by students lightly. Now, not every statement that is made that references a violent act of some kind is a credible threat. All right, if Matt says to me, Bill, I'm going to tell Amy that you like her. If we're teenagers, and I say, you know what, Matt, I'm going to kill you for saying that. You consider the context, okay? Regardless, let me just start off with what we have here that the schools have. The threat assessment process examines the behavior of a student or adult in relation to the context of a discussion or an interaction or action with or about others. Now, the threat can be either non-credible or credible. Sometimes in law enforcement language and school psychology language, they use transient in terms of non-credible. But my feeling is I just like to use words that people can understand, quite honestly. So it's non-credible or credible. And non-credible, is an expression of anger or frustration or banter between a couple of students or adults that can be quickly or easily resolved. Okay, it's an expression, a figure of speech, something that has been used for years that people still use sometimes in conversation. And sometimes kids use inappropriate words that we're dealing with right now. We've talked with the administrators They're putting together a script that I've asked them to put together a script that is age appropriate. That I've asked them to either meet as principals, meet with the student body, or have the teachers discuss with their individual classes, but the same message, that there are some words that are not appropriate to use. Maybe 10, 15, 20, 25 years ago, that was a different matter, but not today, okay? So we look at the context. The credible threat is certainly a more serious intent to harm others with either detailed plans or specific reference to a weapon, and if they're going to bring it to school. And those are the types of things that we enter into, whether they're non-credible or credible. If they reference a weapon, or the possession, or the use, we evaluate the statements. And that process is, they interview the victim and the perpetrator or perpetrators. They interview any witness or witnesses. They consider the context in which a statement was made or an action taken. Does it appear to be an actual intent to harm someone? Does the perpetrator have a disability that may manifest itself in the particular statement? We always will involve law enforcement in a threat assessment determination. And once again, is there a weapon referenced, or a possible use of a weapon to cause harm? And is a statement or action an expression of humor, rhetoric, anger, or frustration? There's where the questioning comes into play. In terms of behavioral considerations, when you look at non-credible versus a credible threat, and some of this material, I do want to say, is adapted from the Virginia threat assessment process. So the Virginia model for student threat assessment, developed a number of years ago. A lot of law enforcement, in fact, our own police department, has discussed this with me. I had a copy of this previously, and last week and a half talked a little bit more with the police department and said, yes, we are using that same material. So this is well vetted, produced by a gentleman by the name of Dr. Cornell, Dr. Dewey Cornell, and contains some information from research from the FBI going back to the year 2000 that was part of an FBI threat assessment analysis. And I think I have a copy of that with me tonight also. So those statements that are considered non-credible really come from an analysis and questioning of parents, witnesses, the students themselves, involving law enforcement. Does the subject admit to the threat, to the statement of behavior? Are they honest about it? Does the subject have an explanation for the threat as benign, such as a joke or figure of speech, or what I just used a couple of minutes ago as an example? Does the subject admit feeling angry toward the target at the time of the threat? Does the subject reacts to threat or denies intent to harm? Is the subject apologetic or willing to make amends for the threat? And is there a willingness to resolve the threat through conflict resolution or some other means? In terms of a credible threat, the subject continues to feel very angry toward the target, expressed a threat perhaps on more than one occasion, has a specific plan for carrying out the threat, has engaged in preparation for carrying out the threat, has prior conflict with the target or some other motive, is the subject, and sometimes the subject might be suicidal in nature. Does it involve the use of a weapon or other firearm, such as a knife or a club or any other weapon? Does the threat specifically involve the use of a firearm? Does the subject have possession of or readily access to a firearm? Do the parents possess a firearm? And if so, is it appropriately stored? There's where the police department very carefully question the parents. Has the subject sought accomplices or an audience for carrying out the threat? And is the threat involved, to a lesser extent in a community like Merrimack, gang conflict? In terms of the action that would, we would look to engage in for a non-credible threat is we resolve it via communication, discussions with the students and parents, a retraction, explanation, or apology. We would provide support service for the victim and possibly for the perpetrator. And we inform parents, both of the victim and the perpetrator, school administrators and the school board and the school community of some threat. Now, I will say that not in every instance does this information flow to all of us need to take place. Sometimes a student will make a very, innocuous statement that, you know what, Jimmy, I'm going to kill you out in the playground if you tell that girl that I like her, or if you don't play with me. You know what, we investigate it, yes. Okay, but sometimes it doesn't go as far as communicating to everyone that there was a threat in the school, okay? If that were the case, we'd be sending home messages. Every school system would be sending home messages every day to parents, okay? So, we have to place some degree of understanding and reality and common sense to this. In terms of credible threat action, we would inform the potential victim, the staff, the parents of the school. We would inform the parent of the victim and perpetrator, the school administrator, the school board, and school community. We develop a plan to keep the students and staff safe. We have done that in the past. Okay, we would assess services needed for both the victim and the perpetrator, and consider if a disability is involved. If a disability is involved, that does not mean we could not administer some degree of discipline. Okay. So the possible responses after evaluation of the student's intent or actions and interview with the victim's parents, after we've done all the interviews, what are some of the possible responses we look for as a student apology, increased monitoring of a student, a parent conference, counseling, conflict mediation, a schedule or room change? We sometimes engage in that. A transportation change, we sometimes do that also. Assessment for special education services, behavior support plan, either an in-school suspension or out-of-school suspension, and in those extreme cases where there is certainly a credible threat, and we have dealt with this over the last several years, expulsion or placement in another more fitting setting. Okay, we are not going to take any chances with the safety of our students or our staff. So I just wanted to give you kind of a brief snapshot of the fact that we don't take these things casually. We don't react to every single statement, because not every single statement rises to the level of investigating as either a non-credible or credible threat. Matt and I have been around for a long time. He and I have, and I know Amy has been very much involved in school safety also in her capacities, but just based on longevity, years of service, we've done an awful lot in terms of school safety, all right? When I came here, I found that he's done as much as anyone I've ever worked with in terms of school safety, and we've continued, the three of us have continued to make sure that our schools are as safe as possible. And so we're not going to take any chances, but I need parents and everyone in the community to understand that we do have to apply some common sense. And this is no reference to the parent who spoke with us at the last meeting. None. I'm just making a general comment that I've made in other districts in which I've worked, that not every statement by a student rises to the level of investigation. If there is the slightest hint that we think, based on these criteria, yes, we investigate and we inform and we take some action. Okay, so I just wanted to let you know that there is some structure here to this, and the fact that we do as much as we possibly can in terms of trying to keep our kids and our staff safe. And I'll be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Questions or comments from the board? Ken.
Yeah, not a question per se. It's and I know a bunch of us are teachers and are in the classroom every day, and I know this is something that we all think about all the time. And I grew up in Manchester, went to public school in the 90s, and bullying and threats of violence were a day-to-day occurrence. It was something that you just heard all the time. And it's scary. It's scary when it's your kid, and it's scary to hear about these things. And then, when you don't have all the information, your mind starts to play the what if game, and it goes all over the place. So it can be a very scary thing. And I think we're validating that fear. We're saying we understand. We're also educators, and there's no greater tool. All the great assessment tools that Amy has brought us, there's no greater educational tool than screwing up. When a kid screws up, and it happens all the time, every day, taking that opportunity to take that child and take that family and sit them down and say, okay, you said X, Y, and Z. Let's talk about why that was said and what that means, and really explaining to all the parties involved, the corrective actions for that, and taking that as a teachable moment, as a moment to say, like, not all language is appropriate for certain settings and things like that. So, and especially when it's your child, you want closure. You want to know all these things. What did we do, and what's the result, and all that. And we have privacy laws that we respect. Every student is allowed to screw up, but every student is also entitled to their privacy. And heaven forbid, if it's your child, if it's my child, I would want to have that same kind of courtesy to let us work through this as a family with our teachers, with our administrators, and find a way to resolve this so that we can learn from it and move on. So I know that we take every threat seriously, and I think, again, Bill said it, context is everything when it comes to this, and you have to realize that again, we acknowledge that when it's our own children, there's a heightened sense of stress and emotion that comes along with it. But looking at this and in talking to our administrators, I have full faith that we are doing our students justice and serving them the best possible way that we can, because these things are very sticky and they're tricky to navigate. But I think we're doing the right thing.
And I want to add to what Ken said, that not just this threat assessment, but just in general, as a mom and mother-in-law of two law enforcement kiddos, they're not kids, they're grown men, I call them kiddos, they are trained in this, and we rely on their expertise and their training in this threat assessment process. So this isn't just, a teacher who's had one PD on how to handle situations like this. We involve the various layers of our district and our law enforcement to handle credible threats and to make these decisions. And so, yes, when it's your child, you want all the nitty-gritty details, and we can't provide those. But we have to trust that our law enforcement here in Merrimack knows what they're doing, and when they've declared this is a threat or it is not a threat or we need to do something about it, we can trust their training. We can trust the training of our counselors and our guidance and all of those layers. In addition, when there is a perpetrator, we also have support systems in our district to support the family, the student. We recognize that if something is said, there may be a reason why, and we want to support that teaching moment in whatever way we can, or if we need to refer out for it. And so our staff is trained in recognizing when something can be handled within and when it needs to be handled without. And so all of those layers are involved in this process. It's why when we get ready to kind of briefly go over our bullying policy, why our bullying policy is 10 pages long. And that's just for bullying. So I totally understand the fear. I understand as a mom who had a child who was bullied in school, I recognize the frustration in that moment. And what I hope that we're communicating tonight is all the ways that we are trying to make sure the students are safe, faculty and staff are safe, and parents can trust sending their kids to school.
I was just going to really add, as someone who works specifically in an elementary school, for most parents, it would probably be alarming how many times kids very flippantly say, "I'm going to kill you," and or the more triggering right now variety of that, which is, "I'm going to shoot you," or whatever. I think most parents would be alarmed at how flippantly that is said, and how often, as someone who's got a walkie and is often the person responding to something like that, how often that comes up, and how it is tricky. You have to take every single one seriously, absolutely, but how now you learn the nuance, right? If it was a flippant comment, or if it was, what I'm going to do? I'm going to go home, I'm going to get my dad's gun, and I'm going to come back. That is a whole different situation. So, believe it or not, we've been able to come and see, all of them go pretty much to the school resource officer, or to certainly to the administrators. So, it is, within all of this context, the system is built, and educators are very well experienced and trained in what is very, much a routine, flippant, albeit totally inappropriate remark that is going to be reacted to, and what is, something bigger that, but everything gets pushed off to administrators, to school resource officers, to the people that can do the actual threat assessment. I never just say, well, you can't say that, and okay, now go back to class. You know what I mean? It is, like Ken said, we take it as a teachable moment, and unfortunately people get hot-headed and say things they shouldn't say that there's severe consequences for.
Lori?
And I was just going to say, I like the part where there's a counseling piece. So if a student's being bullied, the counseling piece can teach that person to have a voice and advocate for themselves, to say stop, walk away, get help, get support in this situation. Because, a lot of times the kid that is bullied is also just really a kind, sweet child. And so that makes them kind of an equal, like going back to Lori, like I had one of those, just the sweetest person in the world. And so giving her the words to be able to say, stop, that's inappropriate. And the other really important piece is bystanders, making sure the other kids have a voice for the kid, like the friends of the group, to say, that's inappropriate. You shouldn't talk to her like that. That's all really teachable moments. So appreciate it.
One of the things, 2 years ago, 6th grade, my son, they do a thing at JMU's called Project Safeguard, which is kind of like a conference for students and their parents. And they go and they have like a keynote speaker and different sessions that you can go to. And one of the keynote did something really powerful at that year's Project Safeguard, which was he defined bullying for the kids. And he called a bunch of kids up on the stage and was like, okay, now we're going to role play what you do when someone is bullying. He's like, we have fire drills. Why don't we practice what to do when someone around you is getting picked on, when you're getting picked on? And you talking about that just made me think of that. And I wanted to mention it because that was one of the things that impressed me most about that day, is that when they were there going into their middle school year, they were being taught that this is what it is. This is how you respond to it. The other thing I wanted to say sort of went back to what Jenna said. One of the things that surprised me most as a parent when my kids entered school, and I knew that this was going to happen to some extent, was you don't realize how many very sort of different philosophies of families people are coming from, and how very, very different people put on the sorts of media they expose their children to. My kids definitely learned about some stuff at school that they would not have been allowed to watch or hear about in my own house. And they're playing these video games. I can't believe I'm saying this because I am and have been a gamer ever since I was a teenager. So like, I know my brother's probably like, oh my God, I'm going to disown you. But seriously, these really young kids, they're playing these games online with other people where they're shooting people. And so they're learning that language. They're learning that way of interacting with people. And that's got to be part of that threat assessment too, is that like, is this the way that people just talk to each other sometimes now? And I'm not saying it's okay, because I personally don't believe it is. But again, it comes back to the teachable moment of, this is when you assess the threat and you say, okay, this was them, talking the way they talk, talk crap in their video games to each other. And this is where we sit them down and we say, okay, this is okay sometimes, but it's not okay at school. And this is why. And so that's why there's just so much that goes into it. And I get how shocking it can be when people who have very different life philosophies than you, your kids are, they're in with them, they're learning how to deal with them, and it's a very young age, and you can't control everything anymore, and that's scary.
I want to add to what you just said, the philosophies of other families outside of our district. So when kids get on their Xbox to play Roblox or Minecraft and they're playing with 20 other people, and some of them are kids, some of them are older kids, if they've got headphones on, you as a parent are not hearing the language that's being used in that same forum. And I appreciate the Merrimack Police Department is actually going to have an event where they talk about what your kids have access to. And it's just a reminder that we have to prepare our kids to live in the world, and yet we still need to teach them the values that we have in our own homes. Either way, whatever it is, we teach our children to be respectful and kind. Period. With that, let's segue to our bullying.
Real quick.
Sorry, Finn. Go.
Interject.
Sorry.
So I do think one of the events you were talking about is going to be on November 6th from 6 to 8 p.m., and that's going to be in the Merrimack High School Little Theater. And it's called Your Teen's Bedroom, What Should You Be Aware Of? Which is a little creepy to me. But it is hosted by the Merrimack Police Department. And so it's a great event for parents or caregivers of teenagers to come and learn about. And then just one quick other thing that I wanted to say on the topic of bullying was that it's really important to remember what is bullying and what is comments or mean, or right, because they're very separate categories. And so bullying is usually repeated, usually causes significant emotional distress or property damage or bodily harm, right? And so we talk about how these threats can kind of be dropped sometimes, and those would be cases where it's probably not bullying. It's probably just two people who got into a fight, like Bill was demonstrating with him and Matt. So,
Perfect segue.
Well, he did my whole presentation, so we can skip on.
It sounds like he's paid attention in his SEL lessons.
But
well, I will say, when I was in 4th grade at TFS, we did I won't take up too much time, but we did a wonderful bystander training with, I want to say, isn't this awful?
Was it Miss
wasn't.
Seiden?
It was not Fern Seiden. It was, she was Miss Seiden's counterpart, and I can't remember. It started with an E.
Etchels.
Etchels, thank you. Two minds, we got it. Ms. Etchels, and she did a wonderful job about not just talking about ways to recognize bullying, but talking about ways that we can all stand up. So,
all right. So certainly aligned with the discussion of threat assessments is the bullying statute, which, quite honestly, as a parent, and we're all parents, is one of the most frustrating pieces of legislation if your child has been a victim. The first slide, I'm going to go through this relatively quickly. I don't want to, go through every slide. This will be online. I don't want to go through every slide in detail, but, our attorney has indicated to us every time we have professional development about bullying that student discipline, which was once defined exclusively by the educator, is now increasingly defined by the law. And there is a good aspect to that, in that certainly the expectations in various school systems are more consistent. The requirements of school districts are more consistent in terms of what the law requires us to do. And certainly in this state, the RSA 193F really is to make sure that we protect our children from, Finn, as you just said, any physical, emotional, psychological violence or trauma, and maintain in our, like slide number 3 right now, Amy, maintain all pupils have the right to attend public schools, including chartered schools, that are safe, secure, and peaceful environments. Easier said than done, okay? Because we know that, there is conflict among students in the schools, but we'll talk about some of the things that Finn just said also, that, not every situation, as Finn indicated, represents bullying. Means in the next slide, Amy, please, means a significant incident or a pattern of incidents involving written, verbal, or electronic communication. And nowadays, cyberbullying is just as big, if not bigger, than in-person bullying. And so what are the criteria that the law says should be present that constitutes bullying? And that's physically harms a pupil or damages the pupil's property. Okay, if there's a physical altercation, somebody throws something, breaks something, an action that causes emotional distress to a pupil. All right? Something that interferes with the pupil's educational opportunities and it creates a hostile educational environment and substantially disrupts the orderly operation of a school. I will say before the next slide, please, Amy, that bullying can be found to be occurring inside the school, but also outside of a school, either at a school-sponsored event or a non-school event. For example, if there's something that goes on in a child's neighborhood, and there's some significant bullying, imbalance of power between two individuals, that impacts the victim's ability to attend school safely and to focus on school. That is an incident that constitutes bullying and is dealt with in the school district.
Can I just piggyback off of that
Sure.
for a second?
Yep.
I don't mean to interrupt your thing, but it can also be, and I see this a lot in my job, they have these class group chats, right? So the kids are in class together, and what's happening is actually happening outside of school in a group chat, but it starts with something, they're talking about something that happens in school, it happens outside of school, but it's carried right back into school the next morning. So kind of exactly what
Yep.
you were talking about there.
And one of the key terms associated with bullying is imbalance of power, okay? Doesn't necessarily have to be physical in nature, although it can be. Somebody's a big, tough person and wants to bully or intimidate another person. Yes, that is bullying. Sometimes you get the popular groups in a school district, regardless of whether it's elementary, middle, or high school, and they exclude a person, but it's not only just passive exclusion, they sort of badger and insult the person. Sometimes it's a reference to a person's physical characteristics, whether it's weight, whether it's color, whether it's religion, whether it's gender. There are a number of things that can constitute bullying. And so the important thing is, I think, and Finn references, is it repeated? Is it intentional? And does it involve an imbalance of power? I can basically skip the next slide. We know what the term perpetrator and victim means. I've explained to you that bullying can occur on school property and outside of school, either in a school-sponsored event or some event in, for example, a neighborhood that substantially either intimidates or makes a child feel uncomfortable. Now, one of the requirements of the bullying statute is that the school system have a bullying policy, which we certainly do. As you referenced, it's multi-page. It's policy JICK. Okay, and in terms of reporting, we need to report incidents of bullying to parents within 48 hours There is an investigation. We have a specific form, a bullying form, that needs to be completed, needs to be thoroughly completed. And that investigation is to be conducted within 5 school days, not calendar days, but school days. Now, I do have the authority to extend that investigation by 7 more school days. And there have been 2 or 3 occasions over the last 3 years where I have done that because a principal needs more time to interview witnesses, to talk with parents also. All substantiated bullying claims are reported to me, and I have to keep them on file. Now, the most frustrating part to many people is the fact that we're not allowed to provide the name of the perpetrator, although the parents pretty much always know because their children tell them who's been bothering them, who's been bullying them. We can't tell them about any discipline, and that really frustrates people. And I've been experiencing that for years. And, people saying, "Are you telling me that you can't answer my questions in terms of who it was that was involved and what the discipline is?" And I said, "I'm sorry, I can't, because that's the statutory requirement." Also, sometimes parents will feel that the discipline that's administered is not strong enough. But here's where we need to abide by the statute that says we should engage in progressive discipline. Okay? Whether it's an apology, time away from some activity, loss of privileges in the school, some sort of restitution or community service. Sometimes that's not good enough. And I absolutely understand that because I've been there as a parent myself. I think we all have. That we would like to see more stringent, discipline or punishment, but we do have to follow the progressive discipline approach. And there's certainly we want to give our students a chance to correct their behavior. And if not, we go to more severe consequences. But that's sort of a brief overview of the bullying statute. Once again, not every situation is considered an incident of bullying, but we're very much in tune with what constitutes bullying and what doesn't. And if we have a question, we call our legal counsel, who specializes in civil rights materials and issues, is really an expert on bullying, on restraint and seclusion, on Title IX. And so we spend a lot of time on professional development with respect to bullying, with respect to threat assessment. We work with the police department. Very pleased to say we have a wonderful working relationship with the police department. But can we, can we satisfy everyone? No. And we understand that. And as parents, we know that, look, we were all called a name at some point in time in our school careers. We all had uncomfortable moments. And, we love to see that perpetrator receive some, severe consequences. Yes, but there is a process, okay, that we have to follow, and we do follow that process. Okay.
Questions or comments from the board? Just want to remind everyone, policy JICK, pupil safety and violence prevention, bullying, is on our website. Page 8 of that, I think, is a really good reference to RSA 193F:4, Roman numeral 2, subsection K, that discusses potential consequences and how that progresses, as well as remedial measures that are included, and that breaks it down pretty well if you are more interested in that progressive discipline policy.
Yeah. And we do have 1 or 2 other policies. Our student behavior, conduct, discipline, and due process is policy JICD, and that is certainly on our website also in the policy section.
All right, moving on to budget meetings. I think we need to make some adjustments to the calendar. So,
Well, we have listened to you in terms of doubling up, an attempt to double up meetings to facilitate moving through the budget process. And so Matt and Amy and I went back and took a look at the budget meeting schedule. And we've worked with Sandy, my administrative assistant, and we've proposed this schedule, which in some instances involves 2 meetings a week, which is certainly doable. But if there are some conflicts, let's discuss them and figure out how we need to navigate through this schedule.
I'll start.
go ahead, Ken.
I'm the problem. So there are really only 2, which I was actually pleasantly surprised at. 2 dates that conflict with my schedule. Music teachers in December are not good friends. So Monday, December 9th, we have a big fundraiser, and I'm unavailable that evening. And then on the Thursday the 19th, as I shared earlier, that is the night that it is the James Mastrocola Upper Elementary School first concert of the year. My son is in beginning band this year, and I think my whole family would disown me if I wasn't at that concert. So I do believe that will be an earlier thing, and so I was wondering if perhaps the possibility of pushing that back a little bit was something we could discuss.
So let's talk about that Thursday. We have 2 options. We could push it back to 7, which is when we used to meet, or we could use the snow date and make that Thursday a snow date for the 16th.
I would love that. Yes.
Okay, so let's just flip-flop those.
So Wednesdays, so you're putting the meeting on?
Yeah, well, the meeting will be on Wednesday, and Sandy will verify where we're meeting for that, whether it's in here or the memorial room. And then we'll make the Thursday, December 19th, a snow date. I hope we don't need a snow date in December.
That would be nice. Yeah.
The Monday, again, the same option is available to move it to the snow date on Wednesday, the 4th.
Yeah, that would.
Say that one more time.
Move the December 9th meeting to December 4th, which is listed as a snow date. Yeah, I've just sat there and said that and thought, I need to double check my own calendar.
Yeah, I can't do 4th.
Okay.
Was the 9th the problem?
Yes.
The ninth, just
The
for me.
Oh, right.
I'm the problem. I'm the problem. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. What did you say, Matt? Oh, okay. Thursday is town council night.
I was just about to ask, is there some reason we can't do the 5th?
Do we want to use the December 18th as a active date instead of a snow date also?
Well, we moved the 19th
Yeah.
to the 18th.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I
that's
kept
okay.
thinking of the, yes. Yeah.
Okay, so, I mean, if the memorial room is available on Thursday, the December 5th, we could potentially do it then. What is everybody's schedule on December 5th?
Yeah, that one works for me.
Okay, so move the 4th to the 5th.
Okay.
Move the 9th
Yeah.
to the 5th.
Fifth, right. Okay.
Okay. Any other conflicts that we need to discuss? The thing I like about this is it gets us to our work session before Christmas.
Yeah.
All right. Is that good with administration?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Thank you.
Can somebody just send us a new one that
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, yes. We will do that in the morning.
Absolutely.
I was just about to say preferably before the 19th, which is like more than enough time because that's the next budget committee meeting. And so I'd like to share that schedule with them then.
Okay.
Mhm.
And I'm meeting with Jen later this week, so I can tell her as well. All right, moving on to health and dental insurance. Revisit the rates for 25-26. Always a fun conversation.
Certainly is, isn't it? And I'm always the one to bring the news to you. In past years, I've seen it as high as 27% increase. I've seen it as low as a minus 3.5 2.5% decrease. Normally we get a guaranteed maximum rate, not to exceed figure, and then we wait until April to get the revisit rate. The Health Trust is changing the way they do this now. They're giving us the actual rate now so we can build our budget and not be concerned about having a different rate when the rate comes in. So this is the rate. So what it's going to happen is it's going to give me the ability to take that rate and use it to compile the default budget, because like the salary increases that are contractual obligations for the MTA and MESA, this is also one of those contractual obligations that are in both collective bargaining agreements. So the range has been around 2.3% to 19.4% increase. This is for everybody. Yeah, I know, Amy. I'm leading up to this. I'm leading up to this. So for us, the increase is 9.9% for the middle tier plan. The top tier plan is going away, and the site of service plan, which is the lower cost plan, is going up around 14%. But it's not as big a hit as the one with the 10%, because that's where all the bodies are right now on the middle tier plan. On the they used to call it the HMO Blue, but it's like ASB, whatever it is now. But that's what it is. So it's 9.9% for most of the people that are in our employ. What that equates to is around a $1.4 million increase to the operating budget. So we have that tacked on to the previously approved and voted on wage increases for staff, and so we're getting up there as far as the default goes. So that's the information that I have to share, and like I said, it is the rate. And they are doing it now as opposed to having us wait, because I think in prior years there hasn't been much differentiation between what the GMR was and what the actual one was. We've only got lucky a couple of times on this, and at least we know it up front, so we know what we're dealing with.
Comments from the board?
I don't like it.
Is there any sort of I'm not even sure what I'm asking, because last year was like 15 something percent, which, I mean, at least this is less than that, I guess.
Yes.
What's up with the industry? Like, why are we seeing increases this high? Do we know?
Well, we're like 89% on our own claims, so it's a claims-driven policy. They have a general capitalization cost. I think they're at like $100 million in reserve right now, and they want to build up a little bit for future claims. You know, you remember this is for 25-26, so they're forecasting a year in advance on this, so they can remain a solvent entity. In the past, there have been health insurance holidays come to us, reimbursements come back to us in future years. I can't say with any kind of certainty that that's going to be the case on this in a couple of years, but it's based upon basically our claims and what the run out for potential claims is going to be. So we're kind of in the middle. You know, you look at that 2.3 to 19.4. So it could have been worse, but it's based upon our own claims. It's like 90% of it is our own claims.
So what's the difference between our middle plan and a consumer-driven healthcare model?
Well, that would depend upon what the plan design of the consumer-driven health model is.
So I bring that up because Jaffrey Renge went to that, and instead of having a 16.4% increase and a $1 million increase in their HMO, they got a 4% increase and only a $200,000 increase. Mm-hmm. And their employees are actually very happy with their new plan. And so I think it might be worth maybe finding some information about.
Well, I used to work there for 2 years, so I am sure. I think everybody's gone now. I think the special ed director is one of the assistant superintendents is still there, so I could certainly give them a jingle and find out what they're doing. But you have to. The MTA and the support staff have to agree with any changes to the plan design. So, people think it's easy let's just go out and bid it out, right? I've been through that in this district before. It was not a pleasant experience. The first thing you do is you have to get 3 years of loss runs from the trust, and that takes a lot of time. And you really need a consultant to work with you and to bid this out to different companies. And then you have to bring in both unions to just sit down at the table and look at what the offerings may be. And they're going to want to keep the plan design, the benefit, probably around the same because it's in their CBA, it's in their collective bargaining agreement. So it's a process. But I will definitely call up my friends at Jaffrey Ringe. I probably still have a few there, and find out what's going on and what they did actually. Thank you.
I appreciate that too, because I appreciate you explaining that, because it's really easy to say, oh, let's just go shop around, and hearing why it maybe isn't necessarily as easy or even as cost effective, because all of those man hours doing all of those things cost money in terms of time. Paid for our employees. So.
We did it years ago. We went. We got a proposal from School Care, which was a Cigna product. I think the savings was probably around $500,000 in year one. But you can't get years ago when I used to work for Hooksett, I could get like a rate lock guarantee for like 3 years. Not going to happen. In this hasn't had the ability to happen for the past 20-something years. They will not give you that. But you save a lot of money your first year, and then sometimes what they're doing is they're buying your business, which means you get the business, which means year two can look entirely different. So that's something to be mindful of when you're shopping around.
Well, and like most of us with employee healthcare, there's limited options for the type of healthcare we need, the type of business that we are. So I do recognize that is, those constraints as well. But man, 10%, that's a big number. All right. Any other comments? Okay. Any other? Oh, sorry. We've got to go to the deliberative session dates while we're setting a calendar. March 1st to March 8th is our time frame. Do you have a recommendation?
I don't. I thought we,
Tuesday, March
discuss
4th?
and see what might work best for you.
I like Tuesday, March 4th.
That sounds fine.
Okay, and a snow
Do
date of. Does the snow date need to be like the 6th or the 11th, Matt?
Usually we skip a day. So the 6th.
Do it Thursday the 6th.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then the town, they operate on a town charter, so they naturally will fall the week following us. So that's the way it's built. So we go first, they go second.
All right.
That's at 7 p.m. though, right?
Yes.
Yes. All right, any other new business? Then we will go on to the second review of the revised limited English proficiency policy. Are there any changes, reviews, questions, considerations?
We've had no public comment on that.
Then it'll be up for approval and revision at our next meeting.
It's 7 p.m. I'm going to let.
All right, approval of the October 21st public and non-public minutes. Do I have a motion?
I will make a motion that we accept the minutes as presented.
Do I have a second?
Yeah, I'll second.
All right, motion made by Jenna, seconded by Ken. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
500. Educator nominations.
There are 2 nominations in your packet tonight. One is for George, and I'm going to mangle this Greek name. I'm going to do my best. Kallipolites? Well, we'll see. We'll have to ask him.
pretty good.
He's being nominated to become a special education teacher at Merrimack High School. And Annabelle Olson, no relation to our Bill Olson, social studies teacher at Merrimack High School.
Do I have a motion to accept the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to accept the consent agenda.
Moved by
Second
Ken,
it.
second by Lori. Discussion, questions? All those in favor say aye. 500. Committee reports. All right. Correspondence.
I had
Lori.
a couple correspondents. I brought them to the right people.
Same.
Same. And we got CC'd together on a lot of correspondence. All right, comments from the board. Lori.
Well, I just want to say I was very, I wanted to welcome Finn, but I was also really happy when I heard that, we have done some training through Project Safeguard and through, on bullying, on, anything that we can do to be proactive, and that we're doing that work made me really happy.
Any other comments from the board? All right, at this time, I will open the floor to public comments on agenda items. Remember, when you come to the mic, to state your name and your address. If you're a student, you do not have to state your address.
James Larkin, 119 Babuzik Lake Road. I was the one that was here last meeting. I think I'm kind of the main point of what was discussed with the bullying and the violent behavior that you guys were mentioning earlier. A little bit of this is irrelevant to me at this point. We've decided to pull our kids from the Merrimack Public School System based off of the conversations we've had over the last 2 weeks. I just wanted to bring up, because I know other families are out there that have kind of been following this story. The first violent comment was not resolved effectively. It led to a second violent comment, which was also not resolved effectively. Your bullying policy, if you want to call it that, may be long, it's vague, it doesn't really lead to adequate discipline. Progressive discipline is supposed to build on itself. It's not supposed to be progressive for that one action. If, like in this instance, or both of these instances, the perpetrator is a repeat offender, the progressive discipline is supposed to progressively get worse, and it is not doing that. My son, my daughter have been impacted by this. They've been uprooted now. They had to miss field trips, Halloween parties, Halloween parades. The perpetrators missed none of that. And your concern at the last meeting, while greatly appreciated, led to nothing. With all due respect, I think if this town wants to do better, which I think it does, the first step is making sure that the disciplinary policy is in line with what it should be. I believe that it's governed on a school level. The administrators at MES are not adequate to do that. If the progressive policy was in place and there was counseling in place to help these students, they wouldn't have progressed to the level of making these kind of violent behaviors. The comments earlier that kids are being kids and these comments are being more and more prevalent should not be an acceptable response. If you discipline them, they stop saying it. The first person that says, "I'll shoot you," gets disciplined. The second person doesn't say it. And when they don't see the discipline happening, they think that it's acceptable, which is why 3 school days after the first person said they were going to shoot, the second person said they were going to shoot. I also want to point out that Merrimack PD somehow decided that it wasn't a credible threat in less than 45 minutes. I don't know how you do that. When I asked questions, they told me I was being unreasonable. But I would think that it would take more than 45 minutes to determine if a reasonable threat exists when a kid says something that has to do with a gun. I would think that the school district would want to know that more than 45 minutes worth of effort was put in to determining if it's a credible threat or not before you just say, oh, the cop said it wasn't a credible threat, let's move on with our day. Throughout the entire process, my family felt very much like we were an inconvenience. We felt very much like nobody really wanted to deal with it. The second threat was called with by the assistant principal, not even the principal, because the principal couldn't be bothered to get on the call to tell us what was going on. So I just want you to know that the process needs to change. Just saying that the statute tells us to do this or the rules tell us to do that, I think you guys are put in place to challenge those statutes, to bring that to people's attention if something isn't working. It's not working. It needs to be fixed so that other people don't have to get displaced. We are fortunate enough that we found a place to go. Not every family is going to have the ability to do that. And the next family shouldn't have to just keep sending their kid back to school to stare at the perpetrator over and over again. Thank you for your time.
May
I
I
will-
just
Go ahead.
respond for 1 second to a comment that Mr. Larkin made? If Mrs. Romaine was involved in an important meeting, that does not mean that she couldn't take the time or was not concerned enough, okay? So I just want to make that clear. All of our principals take these things very seriously. And if she didn't respond, it's because she was tied up in a meeting at that particular point in time, and not because it didn't mean anything to her.
I'd also like to add that she's been involved in a lot of meetings in the last 2 weeks.
I
As
also want to
principal.
add that all of our administrators go through very comprehensive bullying training, and Mrs. Ortega, I saw the report. It's very, very detailed. She did a really extensive job.
I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I will make that motion.
Moved by Ken,
I'll second.
second by Lori. All those in favor to adjourn, 500. Thank you and good night.